Of mine. I met Loren playing basketball. I'm the point guard. He usually plays center.
In my dreams.
Now, we were joking that if there's 10 of us, we play over here and a lot of the college students will show up. So you're privileged to witness before you 2 members of the old guys team. I got to know Dr. Oke somewhat in the locker room. We'd have some conversation here and there, and I started to notice how passionate he is, the fire that's inside him for some things that are very, very important to us. And so I'm excited to introduce him, and I anticipate that this is going to be a bright, exciting conversation. So.
I know, but bright and exciting. I decided to go low tech just so everybody had something to take home with them. So there's some papers coming around there that we're going to refer to. Just really quickly, it is fun. When I thought about doing this, I thought I'd make fun of Nathan. We have a love and hate relationship. When he's on my team, I love him. When he's on the other team, I hate him because he cannot be stopped. He's just an amazing ball handler for a guy his size, and he can get through any crevice you give him. So it's pretty difficult. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you folks today. I've just appreciated so much the exposure and experience I've had with missionaries in the past. Our family's had some people that have been lifetime with, I got to think of the translators, Wycliffe, thank you. They were down in Papua New Guinea for years, and the different exposure that gave us when they came home and that kind of thing. We have some currently in the Philippines that are cousins of mine and that kind of thing. So really appreciate what you do and really appreciate those challenges as well. That is difficult. For some of you, I just had somebody come up and ask me, yes, indeed, my mom is Jeanette Oke, and so if you've watched Love Comes Softly or read the books or all those kinds of things, yeah, I don't dial it back. It's really okay. But it's an interesting journey for our family, for sure, to go through that and to see. I have had some administrators here at the school grab me and say, "Oke, I can't stand you." And I'm like, "What? Wait, what?" And she said, "My wife makes me watch those movies." And I say, "That's not my problem. You can live through it." So, well, I will tell you one story since you like that. When she started writing, we were just in high school. And so one of the things that she did was she hand wrote the first book, Love Comes Softly, literally is a handwritten manuscript. And so she set it on the table and said, "You guys help me type this because we got to type it to send it to these publishers." So we started taking turns, and one time, being a 16-year-old boy I was at the time, I'm typing, and I did a whole chapter, and Mom walked by and said, "Mom, you know I'm not going to read this drivel, don't you?" My mom, not missing a beat, looked at me and said, "Son, I didn't write it for you." We had a clear understanding, we just moved on right from there. No, it was a lot of fun, and it was something that for our family has been really interesting as a journey, just the way God's blessed that. It's been amazing the lives she's been able to touch, and so we're very fortunate in that regard. I was just telling somebody the funny thing was, for years before that, my dad was already a small college president, and then when she started writing, he got introduced as Jeanette Oke's husband. So I don't know how that works, but anyway, it was fun. But what I want to do is, if I'm successful at this, Nathan, I'm also going to be mad at Nathan because this is about all I know right here on this piece of paper. If I can do this in 20 minutes, it doesn't say much about me. I'm actually the executive director of our Center for Learning and Innovation here at Indiana Wesleyan University. I came here 10 years ago and really enjoy what I do. We have 3 groups, 3 directors that report to me, a director of instructional design, a director of faculty enrichment, which does faculty training things, and then a director of research. So we don't get bored, we do a lot of things, but one of the things that's become one of my life missions in the field of instructional design, and actually what some people refer to as instructional systems technology, is to help people think about how they think and about how they do things. So I'm going to offer you this morning, Nathan came to me a little while ago, we got talking in the locker room about his book that he wrote, which some of you have seen, and we're currently in the process of rewriting, called The Curious Learner. And here's what missionaries do, and it just amazes me how well you do it. But you get on the field and you see a need and you try to meet that need, which is what Nathan did right here. And there's a lot of creativity, a lot of great stuff in here, and a lot of the wrong words, right? Because he's not a learning theorist. Now, I call him wrong words because I am a learning theorist, and he's writing a book about learning, right? So wrong is a word I want to use cautiously, but he took words out of things that made sense to him and put them together, and it speaks to the African people that he works with, right? When I look at it, I start going, okay, I get what you're trying to say, but frankly, you're not saying it like as well as you could say it, is the way I would say it. So what we kind of got talking about was, well, let's rewrite this book, but let's have it ready for this conference and we can give it to everybody and they can really say, when you want to help people know how to teach or how to promote change, I think of learning as promoting change. So when we put it in that paradigm, if I want to spread the gospel and I want to help people learn, one of the things I want to come really square, absolutely stare in the face right now is you sharing knowledge with somebody does not in and of itself promote change. We're pretty sure about that. As much as we say beliefs matter, and they do, we're going to talk about aligning the other things that matter today. So hopefully that will be beneficial to you, even in light of the conversation you just had, aligning support with what I'm trying to do, what God's called me to do, what that thing is I'm doing in the field. In order to kind of get that concept of alignment, I'm going to tell you a quick story too about a journey that I've been on. Somebody mentioned that we have a coach in the room. I started out as a high school math teacher and a coach. And I coached a variety of sports. Between my wife and I, we coached 5, for goodness sakes. Try that. We got married, and 2 months later, she was my assistant coach as well as my new life. I don't recommend that, but it gave us a strong start to our marriage once we worked through all that. Anyway, I told the principal, we were always waiting for the bus drivers. And I had a schedule, I'm kind of a schedule guy, and I said, come on, show up. Finally, I said to the principal, can I go get my bus driver's license? He said, sure, I don't care. If you want to double dip this thing, drive the bus and coach the kids, it's fine with me. I still pay the same thing. So I said, okay, I'm going to go get my bus driver's license. We're talking 66-passenger cheese wagon here, we're talking, right? So I go to bus driver school, and I show up at this place, and it's 3 days of lectures and then a true-false multiple choice test. And at the end of those 3 days, they hand you your license and say to you, we recommend you go back to the motor pool at your school, get a bus and drive around, get used to it before you put kids in it. Which I did, by the way. I went back to the motor pool, I got a bus. Now, this is somebody I grew up on the farm. My first vehicle I ever drove was a 5-ton grain truck, right, at 13 years of age. So that was not difficult for me. But I'm sitting there later as I'm thinking about learning, and I realized the outcome of that experience was for me to be able to protect 66 of your children. Are you comfortable with that? We didn't even smell a bus, let alone touch a bus or drive a bus. But I can tell you the pressure of the tires. I can tell you the space between the line of the road and the berm. I can tell you blah, 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 blah. I have all this knowledge. I didn't even know how to turn the flashers on when I drove up to my first set of tracks. Fortunately, I looked around the panel and kind of, I just drove across. There was nobody behind me, though, so Okay, so when we think about learning and we think about knowledge, there's something we have to deal with. Doctors and nurses smoke. Do you smoke, Phil? No. Okay, so there's something going on here that we've got to solve. We've got to be part of in the way that we think. So take a look at your paper, and I'm going to tell you how to think like an instructional designer. And what that means is that you think backwards. And you start with the outcome. Now, if you've been paying attention at all to any kind of learning conversation, people have said start with the end in mind. Start where you want to finish and think about what does the finish look like. Right? So if I'm on the field and I'm thinking about a church and you name it, what does that church faith community look like? We do that even here, obviously. We try to think, what does it look like to really be in community as a church? Well, what would we do to promote that? All legitimate thinking. Right? But we're going to do this a little more specific today. I'm going to give you some general examples because when I walked through this with Nathan, and then he thought about his book, it changed how he thought about his book. And again, we're trying to rewrite this. So we came back to the, well, if we can't have the book ready, let's at least maybe share this kind of thinking with everyone. So you'll notice on the top there, we're going to think through 5 different steps. And we're going to start from the end. This is difficult. I got to tell you right now, this is difficult for that college professor right there. Why? I'll pick on you for a minute. Phil and I have a good relationship. Why is this difficult for him? He's a content expert. He knows everything about everything. You know what? I did something I shouldn't have done a couple weeks ago. I went to give blood and they said, you want to give a double? I didn't even think about it. What is a double? I asked her, what does that mean to me? Well, you're going to be here a little longer. Is that it? Do you know red blood cells carry oxygen to your body? They took 2 pints of that. And then the next day I tried to go play basketball again. I couldn't breathe to save my life. Actually, I could breathe, my lungs were okay, but my muscles couldn't get any oxygen. I was dying. But anyway, so there's consequences to these things. And we want to think through them carefully. So that outcome, first generally I wrote here, what's the final result of this effort? What do we really want to end up with? Do we want to just have the whole town praising Jesus? Is that, when we're in, wherever that place is? We want to be able to articulate that really well. So Nathan had a problem. These people, I don't have anybody who can instruct anybody else. I can't multiply my effort. I want people to understand how to, quote, teach. The problem with these content experts is they got more stuff to talk to you about than you can imagine, right? Do you realize, just as an interesting statistic for you guys, how often does the quantity of information in our world now double? When I started doing this technology gig, it was about every 5 years. I know I'm older than I look. I actually am an old man. But how often now does it take the entire history of our knowledge to double? We're just around a year. Now think about all the stuff we quote know. Okay, you can spend as long as you want to with that guy, you still wouldn't know everything he knows, right? We can't possibly transfer all that. Knowledge is a ridiculous thing right now. We're in a different era of human capacity, right? So we have to consider that. Those knowledge experts, so that's all they want to think about. I have a lot of content I want to tell you about. I have a lot of knowledge. That's where they start. It's the wrong place to start. Notice here, it's at the end. Where we want to start is what do we really want to accomplish? The next question we want to ask is, what's around the environment in which we accomplish this? One of the questions I've asked some of our professors is, if all of these people that were listening to you, typically our students, got up and walked out of the room, would it change your presentation at all? And there's a lot of those. I'll tell you what, I've had this conversation with a preacher here locally in the last 3 years. What are you wanting to accomplish when you preach? You know, he said, I want to preach. That's what I do, I preach. Well, what's happening out there? I don't know. I trust God for that. Yeah, you should probably think about it, right? Because it would change your preaching. It would change your presentation if you thought about the people in the crowd. Okay, well, we got to think more even broadly about what's going on in the context of those things. And I know you guys are cultural experts, or at least hope to be, right? In the context in which you do ministry. But that's an important piece. So when we do that analysis, here's what I want to accomplish. Here's the kind of context in which I'm working. I have young learners, I have old learners, I have there's tons of things we can talk about in that context. The next question, which most people absolutely forget, again, pick on faculty, they don't think about it until the very end. Let's see, we've been here a semester. What have you learned? What should I ask you? If you ask this question next, it will revolutionize the way you work. How am I going to measure that? Now, I just mentioned to Nathan this when we were talking about it. He said, yeah, we just had that question too. How are we going to measure doubling our effort? Or whatever that, somebody made a comment, something like that. Yeah, measurement's a really important thing, but no, it comes in increments. And when I have that general statement there, how will I know when we've moved through the increments of success? I'm a coach. I know the difference between, I started with one of our volleyball players. I've coached both volleyball and golf here. And I started with one of our volleyball players who graduated the other day, teaching her to golf. And it's hilarious to teach people to golf because depending on their background experience and the kinds of sports they've played, they might not touch that ball for about, 600 swings. I mean, it's difficult for some people. This kid, though, really good athlete, no lie. 10 minutes into the session, she's starting to hit balls. And they're flying, and you can tell where they're going. I mean, natural athlete. That's different, right? And so what are the increments of that acquisition process? What's the little piece? What's the, how much can I tell? But what's the big one? So we've got lots of things we can think about when we think of assessment. But ask yourself that question first because, watch this. Then I can say, well, okay, if the assessment is strike that golf ball and make it fly, wow, then I go back and start thinking about what do I get this person to do to make that golf ball fly? I can talk about mechanics, I can talk about concepts, the what and the how stuff, right? But if she understands why we're making that ball fly, when I get into that assessment and I understand what I'm going to do for assessment, now it's easy to go back and say, oh, well, here's the kinds of things. I should use a basketball analogy. This is Indiana, right? I should have maybe done that. But these are the kinds of things that foster that success. If I really clearly know where I'm going and I'm doing the kind of practices that foster success on that assessment, I'm going to be in pretty good shape. And then I go to that last question. how much does she need to know to hit a golf ball? Does she need to know the difference between Titleist and Top Flight in terms of that ball? Does she need to know the length of her club? Most driver shafts are 46 inches. Most irons are about 40, right? Does that matter? Well, some of it might, right? So there are some knowledge things, there are some physics principles that really actually might help her. But we tend to be very heavy on knowledge and get stuck there instead of thinking through, so wait, what's really the outcome? You can tell me all you want to about love. I probably need to experience it, right? Like, so that's what we're trying to say with any process as we go through things. Start with that end in mind. Know how you're going to measure that end. Prepare people for that measure. When all of you were in school, I can tell by looking at most of you in terms of your age, roughly, there was a statement we used to make about teachers. And we said, that guy's a lousy teacher because he just teaches to the test. Remember that? What did that mean? Anybody give me a real quick summary? Why was it bad to teach to the test?
That's what a good assessment of what you really should be learning.
Excellent point. Number one, the test was a bad assessment, but we're stuck with it, and I have to teach to it anyway because they have to show success on that test. Well, what if you had the right test? Then that statement all of a sudden becomes totally reasonable. If this is the measure, and it's a great measure, then we're going to prepare people for it well, right? We want to have success on that measure. Totally legitimate. So what we've got to really do some clear thinking about is, what are we really trying to achieve? How are we really going to measure that? And maybe we measure it in steps. Maybe there are increments to that measurement. Maybe there's a big measurement at the end. Maybe that's Dr. Renfrew's final. But you know, we're going to measure pieces of that as we go. So our goal here, in a lot of ways, is to create learning that promotes change, that promotes transformation. When we do that, let's look down at the next thing. I got this from a book by a former president at Whitworth College. In fact, he was president here at Manchester as well. He's kind of famous in Indiana because he's the first guy that hired Steve Alford as a basketball coach, so that was kind of interesting. But anyway, he had a section at the end of his book called Leading People from the Middle that talked about how to promote change. And you can apply this to context, group situations, or individual situations. And we'll see how this comes to life real quick. Nathan, is somebody timing me here? You can keep tracking me here, just make sure I don't go too long. But what he said was, there are 6 different dimensions of promoting change. And what's really unique about this is that if you forget one of these, and it is a deterrent enough, you will probably not get the change you want, even though you've affected the other 5. So just for your sake, his diagram is the stuff on the left of what you're looking at, where it adds support, prayer, and that arrow toward change. I added that just because we want to put it in our context here. But he says, depending on their experiences, depending on their environment, so you can't tell somebody who's an alcoholic, we're going to cure you of alcoholism, and yes, you're going to still go to the bar. That environment probably needs to change. Right? You can't tell somebody who's a victim of abuse to stay in an abusive environment and get their attitude, their heart, everything to change. Right? So we're going to say that beliefs certainly are important. Your attitudes about that change are important. The intentions, if you don't have any intention to change, it's probably not going to happen. I'm going to tell you a quick story about that. And then behaviors go along with intentions. If I can't get my habit to change, I'm probably not going to get it to change. A couple of weeks ago, they played an interview on the Golf Channel here of Jack Nicklaus. And I hope everybody here knows who Jack Nicklaus is, a very famous golfer from Ohio. But he made an interesting comment that I thought was fantastic. He said a lot of things that were pretty impressive. But one thing really stuck with me. He told his wife, coming down the stretch of a couple of tournaments, that he had actually felt tired. He said, I'm in the middle of my career, I'm a little bit older now, just my youth isn't enough, so I think I need to lose some weight. So I'm going to lose about 30 pounds. I think that will put me about a good competitive weight where I need to be. So she talked to him a little bit about it, and they kind of, she was like, okay, that's fine, whatever. And then he said, I need to go make a phone call. And she said, well, who are you going to call? Are you going to come call some fitness person to help you, or some dietitian, or something? No, I'm going to call my tailor. You're going to call your tailor? Yeah, I'm going to tell him to come over in 6 weeks, because I'm going to need to be refit, because I'm going to be 30 pounds lighter. First person he called was his tailor. Okay, now Jack Nicklaus is Jack Nicklaus because of the discipline in his life. Right? And one of the things that we see from somebody like that, and one of the things that I think applies to this, is what we're asking people to do when they change is change a lot of things about their character, but if they don't have that personal discipline, and I know everybody, missionaries, pastors, professors, all of us struggle with different kinds of personal disciplines. And it would be completely legitimate for you to apply this thinking to your life first. It would be completely legitimate for you to try and think about, what are all the contexts of my life? Do I travel a lot? Do I, you can name them all, right? Those things impact your ability to implement change. When you're asking somebody else to implement change, those things all have to be considered. Learning, beliefs, knowledge are part of that. But that knowledge, that content, that learning, that stuff comes at the end of us thinking well about the context of what they're in. So what we're going to have some breakout sessions here, and we're going to take some case examples of things that you're working through, things that you're going through. And say, okay, what if I thought about this backwards? What if I thought all the way out to the end? What if I thought about, how am I going to measure that? What are some of the indicators? What are some of the signs of progress? So I had some kind of sense of assessment, and then I had the kinds of things that would be good practices toward this. And you all have those examples from your lives. You have them from your areas of ministries. I know we can think of a lot of examples. Just so happens that Nathan and I got on this conversation because he's trying to write a book for people that are in the field. The interesting dynamic is, and I used those words, and it was kind of funny because they came back to me. I told Nathan, some of your learning theory words here are wrong. And he told me, in Africa and Uganda, some of your words, because we started doing some writing together, are wrong, right? And that's totally fair. So what we're trying to figure out is what makes sense from a learning theory standpoint in helping people acquire the skill to impart knowledge to someone else. If I have the ability to articulate this, to explain this, etc., well, again, we're trying to share that, but what's important about that exchange that we're having is he can easily picture in his mind his audience, right? I've got a pretty limited scope of Ugandan people in this head right here. So that's a really interesting effort for us to make. All of those things, we know life is contextual, right? But part of it, if we think well around those contexts and think about the 6 dynamics that promote that change, at the end of the day, God's trying to touch on that person's heart. But there's lots of components around that heart that really, if we think well about them, I think we can be a little more successful at promoting the changes both for us and for them. Before we jump away from that, I hope that makes sense. Does anybody have any questions before we break up? Is that good, Nathan? All right. Any questions that come to mind real quick? Anything a little bit unclear there? Anything anybody wants to fire away with the group? Okay, do you want to talk about how we're going to break up? Okay, here we go.
Thank you. Great food for thought, and we'll have some good discussions. So as we go out the doors,